Hey, it's Magnus here, and I've been away for a little bit over a week, actually using all three cameras at the same time to record a couple of productions. Now, in my last production, which I'm going to show you right now, one of the cameras failed on me. Which one was it, and what did I do to recover? Watch and see.
My group and I were assigned to shoot a dance recital last weekend, so for this type of shoot, it was necessary to use multiple cameras to get the best and most interesting shots. In order to properly plan for the shoot, we had to scope out the venue and test out what cameras worked best for each angle. After testing out the shots and seeing what we wanted, we decided to have a 4-camera setup. 2 NX1s, the 5D Mark IV, on a jib, and then the GH5. White balance and exposure settings were set on the rehearsal as well, since we can go to the stage and get the exact lighting that we needed, and it would match the day of the show. After testing and setting up all the cameras, we were done and ready for the next day. On the show, setup was much easier since the pre-planning was done. All the boys unpacked, set up their cameras, and were basically just ready to go. Each camera had its strengths and its weaknesses that we would take advantage of as follows. The NX1 has great file compression, so filming with them on smaller, faster cards makes it a ton easier to film long shoots without having to worry about running out of memory space. We just popped in one card in each, and we could just leave it for the entire shoot, with plenty of room to spare. First NX1 in the back we had set up for a wide shot at everyone for all times. This camera is the most crucial to get correct and to get everyone in our shot that we wanted. The user on the cam is most familiar with this camera, and he leaves it on manual focus and records while keeping the camera interesting. It's an easy angle to get, but very important. The settings were on 4K 30p, since the camera cannot go any higher in 4K resolution. The next NX1 was used for 1080 60 frames per second. The color profile settings match the other NX1, but the faster frame rate will allow for interesting slow motion shots for highlight videos from an alternate angle, which comes in handy. The other interesting setting was that the camera was set to autofocus. You heard me, autofocus. The angle would require that focus be changed a lot, but steady shots with minimal shake are also important. I didn't want this guy's hands touching the lens to focus, so I instructed him to leave it on auto. The lighting changes when the house darkened or lit the stage would cause the camera to blur, but that was to be expected and not an issue, since most shots would start with the camera in the back. This camera was meant for closer shots, and I can say that after reviewing his footage, it worked great. The GH5 was on the other side for another interesting angle. Luckily, the GH5 was set to record 4K and 60 frames per second, so you get the best of both worlds. I also made the decision to use log profile to make sure I record as much dynamic range as possible. These type of shoots tend to overexpose skin tones for girls dancing in the front, but underexpose for girls in the back, so I expanded the dynamic range by using vlog. Also, this camera was hooked up wirelessly to broadcast in the girls' dressing room, so it was helpful that the camera lets you apply a LUT while recording in vlog in order to make the performance look presentable for the students watching. And finally, we had the 5D Mark IV on a jib. I chose 60 frames per second 1080p on this camera to get some 50% slow-mo as well, and since the camera was up close, there wouldn't be any issue regarding the amount of detail we could pick up, since it will be outputting the entire project to 480p for DVD purposes anyway. We also made sure that this camera was set to autofocus, since the current setup, manual focus while being close to moving subjects would be really impractical. I can tell you that after watching the footage that this camera recorded, it was definitely a wise decision. The focus was spot on thanks to the 5D Mark IV's dual pixel autofocus. In between shows, we had a short break where we could discuss how the production went and eat some food before we continued on. That's when the following issue came to light on the NX1.
So that froze on you?
Yes, it froze. I even unplugged it, turned it off, and it was still on. I don't know how. The zoom in, the focus was working, but it stopped recording, time-wise.
This was very strange and needed to be solved right away, before all the footage would be lost. A quick Google search later, and I came to the conclusion that it was the firmware that was causing this issue. I then re-downloaded the firmware using my phone for internet. I installed it to the camera and voila! We continued to record just fine with no further issues. All in all, the shoots went great. After the shoot was over, we were happy to call it a day.
There you have it. The NX1 did fail on me, but I was able to recover by doing a quick firmware update on the spot using my phone and syncing up to that. But not everyone has the ability to do that. So be careful with those firmware updates and make sure that your cameras work before going on a shoot, because you won't always have the ability to correct like I did on this shoot. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, share, and as always, you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. Stay filming, guys. See you later.